Hello.
Hi.
Kayla Lords.
John Brownstone.
Of Loving BDSM, where we help kinksters like you have happy, healthy power exchange relationships. We're back with another Q&A little video. Somebody sent us a question. We're going to answer it, give our thoughts. Yeah, this one's a doozy. Just saying. Just saying. It's a doozy. Okay, let's get right into the question.
All right.
It's a long one, so bear with me. But the context was important, and it actually gave me personally more thoughts than the specific questions themselves.
Oh, okay.
So here we go. I, 30 female, have always been really into kink even before I knew what kink was. When I met my husband, 45 male, I was delighted to find he was just as kinky as me. Opposite sides of the slash even, the D to my S. We were in a long-distance relationship for 6 years until I could move to his state after we got engaged. The distance worked out for me because I didn't want to have sex till we were married, and I had a pretty rigorous school schedule, which would have hindered having a consistent day-to-day relationship. When we could talk, we were always discussing scenes he had done and stuff he wanted to do with me. I loved all his photos and stories from his time in the scene. He had been in it since he was 19, so he had a ton. When I did finally move in, I was disappointed that kink wasn't a big factor of our in-real-life relationship. Pretty much non-existent, actually. There was a lot going on in the world at the time. COVID had pretty much locked us down inside the week after I moved in, and there was a ton to be stressed about. I felt guilty wanting this, meaning kink, out of our already trial-by-fire in-person relationship. Near the end of 2020, I felt like we were in a stable enough moment to bring up the glaring lack of kink in our life. He told me that kink to him was more of a sexual thing, and he was looking forward to exploring that with me when we got married. I was a little taken aback since he is a big proponent in the community that kink isn't inherently sexual, and when we were in a long-distance relationship, we had some really fun, really sexy text role plays going. I didn't think it was crazy to continue that even though we were now in the same room. I was thankful for the clarification, and it certainly made sense why he wasn't pushing kink when we became in real life. We ended up getting married at the end of 2022 and still no kink really. I would bring it up from time to time over the next year. It was always met with, "I'm sorry, I'm really stressed out from work." He works constantly and his work is really important and really stressful, so I get it. There is a lot more to our relationship, obviously, that makes me so happy, but at the back of my mind, I can't help but feel a little led on by the fantasy we created together when we were in a long-distance relationship. I know there's a glaring difference between reality versus fantasy that comes into life with someone else. But when 6 of the 9 years we have been together, we're building the foundation of what was going to be a 24/7 DS relationship. I know I'm not the asshole for wanting it. Good for you. In our latest conversations about it, because I've been communicating this whole time, it seems more and more like he has lost his confidence as a dominant and is so fatigued with all the decisions he has to make daily. Kink is unfortunately feeling more like an obligation than a desire, which he feels insanely guilty about since he knows it's what I want. I've waited so long to take part in it. All this to ask, do you have any advice on how to ease into roles when the head wants it but the body is tired? Any advice for dominant burnout? And any advice for leveling expectation versus reality? We have established this is actually something we want to seriously prioritize going forward in our relationship, since it's something we both still find incredibly hot. I have thoughts, and I don't know how anybody else hearing this situation and the questions might feel, but the thoughts I had nothing to do with the questions that were ultimately asked. The initial thoughts.
Yeah.
But I can go on a rant, so let's let you go first.
I think what stood out to me more than anything in this was the fact that there was so much kink going on in the LDR. Okay. And then when they were in real life, nothing.
I know.
Nothing. That just like blows my mind.
I know. And then I think the part that bothers me the most about that part, and there's a lot that bothers me about that part, is that then now we have a submissive who's going, "Oh, well, I had this expectation of what it would be like, but that's not matching with reality." Good on you for noticing. But it's almost like they seem to almost feel a little, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it by feeling guilty about it, because they admit that they feel led on, and I feel like you were led on
yes.
too, just to be honest.
Yeah.
But we're not talking, like, when we talk about reality versus fantasy, we tend to be talking about, okay, you imagine you'll be naked and on your knees and collared more often than not during the day, but actually you have to go to work, pay bills, or take care of a house, or take care of kids, or whatever your life looks like. This is, you spent 6 years building a relationship and creating expectations for what you both wanted, with no word from the other that this wasn't going to happen when you moved in. If you didn't feel led on, I would be more concerned about you, quite frankly. Because that, to me, is the crux of the issue. And I'm happy to answer the questions she asks, because they're good questions. I'm more concerned that she's the one seeking out these answers as to how to help her dom, who has not done much based on this accounting for the past 3 years to help himself.
When it sounds like he's the one who needs to kind of...
He needs to get his shit together.
Right.
I mean, I say respectfully.
I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I understand having a stressful job, having a stressful life and all that.
Absolutely. And it can interfere for sure.
But what changed that you had such an intense 6-year relationship that once it's in person, then all of a sudden everything is that much more...
Right. And so, you know, a couple of details here that kind of feed into that and make a little bit of sense. So she's like, okay, I don't want to have sex till we get married. Cool.
Yeah.
That's totally like your thing. And he's like, and I like the fact that he's respecting that.
Yeah.
But once you've made that clear to your partner, they should then make clear to you, oh, well, for me, the kink that I want to participate with you is sexual in nature. So if we're not having sex, what do we do in the meantime? And that, from this account, now granted, we only get one side of the story. I can get that. But where's the conversation on his end as the dom going, oh, okay, so this is easy. This is the fantasy and what we do when we're long distance, because we're not actually, I would say maybe this person thinks they're not actually having sex long distance, but when there's sexual pleasure involved, I mean, I classify that as sex. That's just my personal definition. But how does he not say, okay, all this sexy fun time stuff that we're doing long distance, we're not going to be able to do. I won't want to do this with you until we can have sex, because this is how I want to experience it with you. That's a valid conversation to have had. And I'm giving side eye to a dom with that many years experience not being able to have that conversation, either not thinking about it, which I don't know this person, or not being willing to, or what, thinking that if you never talk about it, your partner's not going to notice that you're not having the kink experience that you both kind of built up in your minds and in your experience, that clearly your submissive thought, hey, when I move in, we're getting some of this. And now we're 3 years later. Now, I want to be as charitable as I can be. COVID fucked everybody over. Like, life was weird. It was stressful for the vast majority of people for a lot of different reasons. We don't know what his career is. And I can imagine if it was anything that had anything to do with medical stuff or legal stuff or anything, I could imagine COVID
or even anything to do with, say, like, you know, a grocery store or anything like that.
Right, anything where you had to be public facing, or if your health would, like, the year 2020, I think, gets to be the lost year for many of us, because what was even life, right? So I get that. But to get all the way to 2022 to get married, still not be having these conversations, she's doing the work. She's trying to have these conversations, and to get to approximately now, like we've had this question in our inbox for a few weeks. So, you know, timing and, you know, is a little wibbly wobbly, where, oh, he wants this. And now we have other, like, how do I help him? He's got to help himself.
He's got to help himself. Yes.
Because I'm most concerned that all of this has gone on, and by all accounts, he has not sat her down and said, I have to have some hard conversations with you. Right. And she's been asking for, and according to this account, and leading into it and going, hey, this is what we were supposed to do. And then one of her big questions is, how do I deal with my reality versus fantasy expectations? How could you not have had the expectation you would be doing something once you moved in together?
I'm going to be kind of blunt on something. I'm a little shocked that after they moved in together, that they were no longer long distance, and all this started happening, from context to reading, kink is an important part of her life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm a little shocked that even though things were far from what she had hoped them to be, expectation-wise, that she even married him.
And, and I, being an outsider, I can look in and go, oh, yeah, I'm surprised, too. I agree with you. Having been in a relationship, several relationships over my life, in different ways, both romantic and just platonic, where you know what this person is capable of and you see their potential. Too many of us marry, get committed to, have a serious relationship, however you want to define it, with potential instead of the person in front of us. And so if there was still the thought and even the conversations that, oh yeah, we will, I understand being hopeful. I understand going, I know who you are. I thought I knew who you were for 6 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Can we get back to that? I know exactly what you mean. And I think, if I didn't have my own experiences, I think I'd be like, yeah, I don't get it either. But I do get it. Okay. I absolutely, that first time married potential, not what was in front of me. And I go back to, and we said this in a previous Q&A, where she is outlining all these things that are not good, broken promises, essentially, from my perspective, and then says, but everything else is so good. And maybe that is your life and only you know it, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong about your life, but here's what I'm going to tell you from just my experience. When a partner falls down on the job that hard in one area of life, it's just not that unusual for there to be other parts that they're not fulfilling their obligations. Yeah. If this was the biggest thing that brought you to, one of the biggest things that brought you together and kept you connected in a long distance relationship for 6 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
And that's there's a word, I can't think of it. Like, there's just this huge, this is the defining thing of your relationship, or one of them, right? Because lots of things go into a relationship. And it's never happening in 3 years. All I can think is, okay, what other parts of your life is he not fulfilling commitments? Or is he saying that he's going to do a thing and then it's not following through? And maybe those things are easier, for a partner to deal with, or to pick up the pieces, or to, be kind and go, he's got a stressful job. And so over our years together, I have always tried to give you a lot of grace when life has gotten stressful for you, because, and I think the submissive may understand it as well, I understand the amount of responsibility you have as the dominant and the decider in our relationship. You take a lot of control. You take a lot of power. I give it to you. I go, yes, you can decide these things. Yes, you can be the one leading this part of the train on this part of the track, like those kinds of things. And when stress comes into, hits your life, I am sometimes more empathetic than maybe I ought to be, because I think the submissive might be the same way. I will put my needs on the back burner because I understand how stressed you are, and I don't want to add to your stress, and I want you to work through your stress so we can get back to us. I get that. I get that a lot. But I also think that there is a line where we have gone past, oh, his job is stressful, to you are being neglected in a relationship you thought you were supposed to have. And I'm not hearing any part of this about how we've had a conversation and he told me this and I didn't have expectations. Being stressed out does not mean that all of your obligations go away. It means that your top obligation as dominant is to talk to me and say, things are stressful, and here's where I'm falling down, and here's what I can do, and here's what I can't do, and how are we going to work through this together? That's the obligation a dominant has, not to get a free pass because their life is stressful. Like, I'll give you a free pass for a while,
right? But
then there has to come a point where, and I think, I'm not sure I could wait 3 years to have what I would call a come to Jesus.
Right.
What are we doing?
I mean, let's be honest about this, okay? I have gone through my cycles of life where it was, the DS aspect was hard.
Right.
Okay. I fully expect that at some point in life, you're going to have that.
Sure.
Okay? It's cyclical for everybody. But even when I did not have the bandwidth to engage with that, we still had our protocols.
And hell, you just talked to me. You just let me know where you were at. Like, this is what's going on with me. If I didn't know, right? Mm-hmm. This is what's going on with me. This is how I'm feeling. This is what's hard. And we didn't come to those conversations always level-headed. Sometimes shit had to get really bad.
Yeah.
And then there had to be a blow-up. Mm-hmm. And then I had to give you the side eye of, I know you're not talking to me and you need to be talking to me. And then you would talk to me.
Right.
Like, I get it. It's not, you know, regardless of our roles in power exchange, we're humans. And, you know, stress is going to get to us and life is going to get to us. And we're not going to utilize all of our skills. But 3 years of not utilizing our skills?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and again, that's shocking to me, especially when, you know, it said they're 45?
Yes, the Dom is 45.
And has been in the lifestyle since 19.
He's 19, yeah. And I don't doubt it, but I'm going to go, okay, well, what skills beyond the fuckery does he have? Did he not pick up communication skills? Consent? Like, you were consenting to this relationship based on a premise of what it was going to be. And it, from the read on this question, it does not seem like there was ever a conversation had before marriage even of, I can't do this right now, or I don't want to do this until we're in this situation.
We kind of fell on the other end of the spectrum when we went from long distance to
we overdid it.
We overdid it. Mm-hmm. We, you know, sat down and said, okay, this is going to be, that's going to be, this is what we're going to do, and that's how it's going to be, and
I think that's
blew up in our face, and we had to step back and restructure.
Right, and I think that's probably more common for a lot of long distance relationships who go in person, because that excitement, it's almost like you get a fresh wave of new relationship energy because your relationship has transitioned to this thing you've been longing for however long, and you just go overboard. It's like maybe a type of frenzy, if you will. So I go down. Let's get down to her actual questions. And I had some thoughts. I actually made notes so I would remember them. So here are, you know, some of the, let's go back to the questions themselves.
All right.
Any advice on how to ease into roles when the head wants it, but the body is tired? Any advice for dominant burnout? And any advice for leveling expectation versus reality? And I believe you. I'm not gonna question it, even if I'm giving a little bit of side eye to we have established this is actually something we want to seriously prioritize going forward in our relationship. So let's answer those questions and talk about that part. My first thought on all of this is to wonder if during the long distance relationship, if the fantasy of that was easy because there was distance, and then when coming together, the reality was overwhelming for him.
Yeah, and that is entirely possible, because when you're long distance, you rely a lot on that fantasy. Okay, you know, because that is how you make a connection long distance. You know, not necessarily. I mean, we had our fantasy times,
sure,
you know, but we also had other things that grounded us.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't always all sexy DS talk all the time.
Right.
You know, we would talk about other parts of life.
So, you know, yeah, it's easy to get caught up in, you know, because you're talking on the phone and you're texting and, you know, hot, sexy texts, you know, this and that, emails, you know. So, yes, it's very easy to get caught up in that. And
if they moved in together right as, like, the height of everything with COVID, lockdowns, and the stress of the what-ifs and all of that, I could absolutely see where that would be a kink boner killer. Like, I can see where you'd be like, maybe I don't have the bandwidth for this.
Right, been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Right. And then we get into, and this is the heart, how do you get, the head wants it, the body's tired. I think it's more of a habit thing. And what I mean by that is, if they came together at the height of something like COVID, at the height of a stressful period, regardless of what that stressful period is, and then, you know, maybe he was confronted with, the fantasy felt easier than this reality, and this is a lot, right? I think it's also easy to, and I don't know if easy is the right word, I think it's possible and probable and likely to build it up in your head. The fact that you had the fantasy, the reality was a little jarring. There's been all this stress. We couldn't do what we wanted to do. Then there was, okay, we're going to wait until marriage for sex, and kinky sex then would be off the table, right? And so there's almost a little bit of mind fucking yourself in a bad way of the longer you don't do it, the more you convince yourself it's going to be hard to do it again. Does that make sense?
It does. And yet one of the things I'm thinking of where in this listening to you talk about this, I wonder if it's possible that either one of them manage their expectations.
I mean, maybe. That's where I'll give the Dom some grace. If the expectation was it will be this way when she moves in, and then life in general was a shit show because of COVID, because of whatever else, then, and the fantasy and the LDR was somehow easier, air quote that, easier on the DS side, on the kink side, than the reality of having this person right in front of you. I can see where you could become so overwhelmed that you kind of just shut down. I still don't consider that an excuse for not communicating clearly. And please don't tell me you've been in this decades and not have hard conversations. I'm not impressed by that. Not at fucking all. Now, the other thing about dominant burnout. Burnout lasts as long as it lasts in whatever way. My question is, after 3 years, is it dominant burnout that you're dealing with, or is it the burnout that comes from feeling guilty but never acting on your guilt or dealing with your guilt or communicating about your guilt for 3 years? Because that would... Because here's the thing. If I am charitable and go, he wants this. He wanted it then. He wants it now. But the gap between where he is now and where he wants to get feels too big and too wide, and it's overwhelming. And I am sympathetic to that overwhelm. I can imagine. To me, if I'm being charitable and assuming that that's all real and this was not just leading somebody on, then that tells me that if this person is any kind of decent human being, then for the past 3 years of not clearly communicating where things had gone off the rails, there's probably going to be a lot of guilt there, because you had 6 years building this up and creating these expectations of what life would be like when you got together. And then now you're together for 3 years, married now for months, however long, since the end of 2022. And none of the things that you talked about or planned have come to fruition. And you're not talking about it. So... is it dominant burnout, or is it burnout from feeling guilty for 3 years?
I mean, let's be honest about this. Anybody can make grand plans.
Oh, sure.
All right. But the reality of it is the plans don't always pan out. All right. So again, that comes down to managing expectations. I know for me, going to be shocked by this. I have control issues.
I know.
Right?
You are the worst when you feel out of control.
Right.
I know.
I like to be in charge. I like, that something that's a part of me.
Right.
All right. So when I go through those things, when life rears its ugly fucking head and screws with you, I need to step back. But then there comes a point where, things settle down or whatever. I'm like, okay, I want to get back on this train.
Right. Right. When you're out of control in other areas of your life, you don't handle it well at all. You're not the best version of yourself.
No.
And you can become petulant. You can become downright pouty. Which, by the way, pro tip, telling your dom who's in overwhelm and stressed and feeling out of control about every other part of his life that he's being pouty does not usually yield the results you would expect. So let's say all of that's been going on.
Right.
To answer all of these questions, to me, they all get answered kind of together, because if you're dealing with burnout of any sort, if you're dealing with head wants, body doesn't, body does, head doesn't, whatever, that disconnect where part of you is like, yes, please, and part of you is like, holy shit, I don't think I can. And you're trying to get your expectations you know, in line with reality. The thing I would tell you for how to maybe get started again is to start with easy and fun. Like, not the super serious, you know, all the, maybe the laundry list of things y'all had planned while you were still long distance. What is something that you mutually miss about what you did in kink during the long distance relationship, or that you talked about that you would do in person, whether it's a certain kind of kinky sex, whether it's a certain kind of rule or protocol or task or something that would be part of your life. And I'm going to say you pick one thing that gets you both hot and bothered and like, yeah, that really does it. And then you might have to ease into it. You might have to
low and slow
deconstruct the steps it takes to get to here's how we see this in our mind, and do baby steps that way. Let's say it's, you know, you want to be naked at a certain time of day, kneeling on the ground with your collar on it, and greet your dom at the door like that, right?
Ooh.
I know. It's doing it for me right now. But that's a lot, and that's a lot to get to, and that might feel overwhelming for one or both of you. And I would say, reading this, I don't think it'll feel overwhelming for you if that was your thing. I think it would feel overwhelming for your dom. Okay, well, where do you start? How do you deconstruct that? Well, the first part is, maybe it's the first part is wearing a collar. Maybe the first part is greeting him at the door. There's no nudity. There's no kneeling. There's this. I'm gonna consistently do this for you as your submissive, and I'm gonna do that until you're like, yeah, this is what we do, and then you add another step.
It could be something as simple. You know, if this person has such a stressful job. Do they have a special drink that they enjoy when they come home? Make a special drink.
What relaxes them,
right?
Regardless of what it is.
Just like you do my coffee,
right?
You know,
can you offer as a submissive your stressed out dom something that relaxes them that is not related to kink, but the fact that you're doing it as their submissive, that's what makes it kinky. So that's where I would tell you to start to deal with both burnout and the disconnect between mind and body, and the how do we manage our expectations and keep this to reality? Like you said, low and slow. You can start in any aspect of it that you want. The options might actually be overwhelming because it's like, well, what kind of submissive are you? Are you a service submissive? Okay, what kind of service can you provide that your dom would want, right? Is it mostly a sexual submission thing? Okay, well, what is a small, easy to accomplish thing that you both really enjoy and maybe have really missed? But you do one thing that sounds fun and exciting to both of you. And this is often the hardest part, and everybody is going to get through this in their own time and in their own way. You push through the anxiety. You don't push through boundaries. You don't push through limits. That's not what I'm talking about. But that feeling of, oh my God, we haven't done this in so long. Can I really do this?
Right.
Am I really ready for this? You might be able to barrel through that like the Kool-Aid Man, or you might have to inch toward it and open the door inch by inch to get through there. But at some point, there's got to be that discomfort of, we haven't done this in a long time. Will this work? You have to push through that. I can't tell you how long that it will take to push through, but that is ultimately the thing. Yeah. But start with something fun
and I think
exciting.
You know, if it hasn't been done yet, you need to have a sit down, heart to heart about expectations between the two of them.
I would say before they do that, they need, and maybe that's this piggybacks. The conversation I would want you to have is about clear fucking communication. Your dom's got to get to a point where if he starts feeling overwhelmed and is like, can we do this? He's got to fucking tell you.
Yeah.
If things are too stressful and he is so overwhelmed he doesn't feel like he can function in the way that you both expect him to function, he's got to fucking tell you. And quite frankly, until he can get to that point, how the fuck do you trust him to follow through on anything he says he'll do?
It doesn't matter how many years you have in the lifestyle. If that entire time was spent doing scenes, you know, in order to have a relationship with kink intertwined in that relationship, you need to have communication skills. I mean, I didn't always have good communication skills.
We're constantly working on those.
It's a muscle that you have to exercise.
And this can be hard for doms, especially if, you know, 20, 30 years in the lifestyle, that's a little old school. That means that he's probably been around some, you know, bullshit that says doms are supposed to behave a certain way or whatever.
Probably old guard, maybe high protocol.
Maybe. But here's the deal. We live in the year of our Lord 2023. And if he wants to have a relationship with you that's kinky, he's going to have to learn how to get vulnerable and tell you the hard fucking thing. And it is a skill. And I don't have a lot of patience for people who tell me how experienced they are, but then don't have that skill. But I also understand that it's a skill and it's a muscle. And if you haven't been using that muscle, it's not going to be as strong as it once was. So this was not a short episode at all. But that's the thing. Let's recap. The submissive in this situation, that's Lola howling in the background, has every right to feel led on. And quite frankly, if you're not pissed off, just know I'm pissed for you. Okay. If this was not a situation where this partner genuinely just led you the fuck on, and now you're here and and you have had the heart to heart, and there's a genuine desire on both parts to try this again. One, there's got to be a commitment from your dom to communicate more clearly, and more often, and be vulnerable, and they have to fucking follow through. Okay,
right.
Two, to get through the burnout, the expectation, how do we do this again? Start with something fun, exciting,
and simple.
Simple. Even if you take a big thing that's exciting and just break it down into teeny tiny steps, or you think about what you want, like you personally as a submissive, what you want and need as a submissive, and then what they want and need and might like and are like kind of curious about kind of thing. And then match that up and start with one thing. Yeah. And then, and I don't think our submissive person who has asked this question might have this problem, but dominant definitely might. You're going to have to push through anxiety and that discomfort of, can I do this? Can we do this? True. Not boundaries and limits. We don't push through those. But we push through discomfort when we're trying a thing that we've told ourselves, we've mind fucked ourselves out of doing because of whatever else was going on. And that might take more time than anything else. But that would be... Yeah. I hope that this is just, a fucked up time in your relationship, and that you both really are on the same page, and that you both genuinely want this together, and that you can find your way back to one another. That's what I hope. Yeah. I might remain skeptical for now though, but that's what I hope for you. Okay. If you have a question you would like us to answer, please feel free to submit your question. The link is in the description box. It's a page on our site. Literally, you put your question and it comes to us through email. If you have thoughts on this person's questions and advice you would impart and thoughts that came up for you, please share those in the comments. And we'll be back soon with another one of these. Yeah. If you enjoyed this, we love a thumbs up. If you like it enough to want to come back for more, please consider subscribing.
And once you subscribe, you might as well go ahead and ring that notification bell so you get updates of new content.
Just do what Daddy says.
When we have new questions.
Just do what Daddy says. Yeah. And if you really enjoy this, want to help us keep doing it and being weirdos on the internet with microphones and an internet connection, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/KaylaLords, link down below. You get access to extra content, a Discord server, all kinds of stuff. You can join for as little as $2 a month. Yeah. Bye. Bye.